What is going on, everybody? How you all doing out there? I hope this video is finding you well. Welcome back to Get Right On In. My name is Andrew, for those of you who do not know, and today I am just going to be talking about this awesome book that I just read called They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This is a spoiler-free video, so if you have not yet read the book, there are no worries. So with all that now out of the way, without further ado, let's get right on in. So They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera is a very raw and heartwarming book in a weird way, considering that it's all about death. The story follows our two main characters, Mateo Torres and Rufus Emeterio. Mateo is a reserved 18-year-old whose dad is in a coma, and he is very antisocial and basically doesn't really want to do anything. And Rufus, on the other hand, is a 17-year-old orphan who has his little gang of friends called the Plutos, which is named after their orphanage, and he is the sole survivor of a car crash that killed the rest of his family. So each of these characters has received a phone call from this group called the Death Cast, which in this version of our world is basically just these people who call you up and let you know that you are officially within your last 24 hours of life. Basically, by this time tomorrow, you will be dead without knowing when or why or how it will happen. You are simply left with the knowledge that you will die by the end of the day. From there, the decker, or the person who is on deck to die, is free to live their last day on Earth however they choose. In addition, there is this website/app called The Last Day Friend, which is essentially when all of these deckers come together and try to find somebody else who is also on their last day so that they can spend their last day together. This option is convenient for people like Mateo who don't want to leave the house and basically spend all of their time cleaning dishes and not really knowing what to do with themselves on their last day, and for people like Rufus who had to witness his whole entire family's deaths after they received their death cast call and doesn't want his friends to have to do the same thing that he went through and see him die if they have to see him die, because he really doesn't know. So while these two are sorting out their thoughts and trying to figure out how they are going to spend their last day, they wind up meeting on the app and becoming friends from there. The rest of the story chronicles said last day as they just go through their adventures together, between visiting Mateo's father in the coma to being on the run from the police because Rufus tried to beat somebody to death. They both just tried to come to terms with their last day on Earth. And ultimately, that is kind of just the main theme of this book, obviously, is just taking that one question of, if you knew that this would be your last day, what would you do? And just very much examining it from there. So outside of these characters actually having to face this question, there's also the theme of living every day as though it were your last all of the time, no matter what. Both of these characters go through such a wide array of emotions and thoughts as they come to terms with their own death. What would they have done differently throughout their lives if they would have known they wouldn't have survived their teens? How would their lives have been different if they had treated every day like their last day? Part of the convenience of having death cast around is giving you that 24 hours notice in advance, so why live your life with any fear until you actually receive that call? Personally, I really related a lot to the discussion around the topic of death in this book. Having recently just lost my father when I read it, it really actually helped me deal with my own grief in a lot of different ways. There are so many conversations in this book about what happens after. There are also so many discussions about how those who are left behind feel, and they were all just very cathartic and healing for me personally in their own way. There is no way out of death, and that is just a sad truth of life. However, one conversation that happened really stuck out to me a lot in this book, and that was on this whole idea of being able to choose when your life was complete. However, there are a couple of issues that are raised raised with that discussion as well. The first being the idea of suicide, and if you were always able to control when you actually died, then you could just give up when the going got hard. In addition, part of the reason that this conversation even happened was about the idea of grief and the people who had to stay behind and wishing that they didn't have to have that pain. But the truth is, even if you did choose to live out your life in all of its fullest and hit your 80s or your 90s or do whatever you felt like was comfortable and made you live the best life possible, no matter what, as soon as you're gone, there's still gonna be the grief that is left in the wake of your death. So conversations like that really had me thinking just in my own head, and I was really appreciative of the tact in which this topic was dealt with in this book, because obviously death is a little bit difficult to discuss, and I just thought all of the conversations about it, as I've mentioned, were just really healthy and beneficial for me personally. But, however, as much as I did love this book so much, there are also a few little issues that I had with it as well. My main issue is that very often throughout this book, we are introduced to some sort of side character. Whether that character be a Decker who has just received a phone call, or a non-Decker who has something to do with someone who's connected to someone somewhere along the way. I was just really overwhelmed with the amount of characters by the end of the story, because at first it really wasn't so bad, but at the end, or by the end, I was really just not wanting to meet anybody new, to be honest, especially because most of the characters only had 1 or maybe 2 chapters. Some of the characters never even had an actual conclusion, and it really just took away from the main story between Rufus and Mateo whenever any of these other people were introduced, especially those who were just around for the 1 chapter, and then you're kind of waiting for the rest of the book for them to come back, and they never do. Only one character by the name of Delilah had an interesting storyline to her when she got a phone call from the death cast, and her ex-boyfriend was on the death cast, so she just thought it was a prank, and she was the only other person that was interesting to like stick around with. But I felt like instead of having all of these random side characters, I would have even rather read other books in this little universe with other people like Delilah who have received this death cast call, and had the entire story be about them and their development, because sincerely it really did just take away so much from the main story by the end of it that it ultimately brought it down to a 4.25 rating for me, just because I got so annoyed with all of the other people that I had to meet along the way. Regardless, this book as a whole was so intriguing and thought-provoking and oddly heartwarming, like I said at the beginning, in its own weird way, especially considering the topic at hand. The development of the relationship between Rufus and Mateo is definitely one of the more heartwarming instances in this entire book. There's just so much focus on love, especially love surrounding death, that it just casts a line of hope around the entire topic. However, obviously, none of that actually takes away from any of the pain that people feel when their loved ones pass. Even the parts that are dealt with so gracefully here still don't shy away from the main topic at hand of the book, which is death. Death really does come for us all in the end, and one of the main points of this book is really to just focus on living while you have your life. There are definitely many of opinions on the usefulness of the death cast in this little world that they have, but the point and the purpose of everything remains the same. What would you do if you knew for certain that this was your last day on Earth? So now I encourage you to think about that question for yourself, and maybe you can go challenge yourself to do something today that you might not have done before, because maybe you can put it into your head that I might get a call from the death cast tomorrow. And if that were to happen, what would I want to do today? That is definitely a mentality that I have taken away from this book, and it's definitely a book that has affected me and impacted me very greatly. And outside of really not liking those side characters that I just felt like really didn't need to be in there, I sincerely enjoyed this book a lot. I believe it will be a reread for me at some point in the future, and I hope that you would like to read it as well. If you have, let me know your comments on this book down in the the comments section down there, and if you are interested in reading this book, let me know that as well. While you are down there in that comment section, if you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would consider giving it a little thumbs up, as well as consider pressing on that little subscribe button to join me for more bookish adventures and writerly adventures and entertainment-y-esque adventures as I produce them along the way. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching this video, and until the next one, I hope you have a day just as beautiful as you. See you next time. Bye.